So, thank you all for joining us today. I know we're starting a little late because of some technical difficulties. We should be right on time still, and we should still have some time for both an intermediate Q&A as well as a final Q&A. But if you have additional questions, please feel free to reach out directly to FAFSA at wasac.wa.gov, and we'll also provide some additional information. And one of the things is, as probably mentioned already, this meeting will be recorded. That's because we want to make sure that those who can't join us today will still be able to get this information. So, a little bit of background is I am the college access. Well, first off, my name is Sean Moran. I use he, him pronouns. And my role at Washington Student Achievement Council is the College Access Initiatives Data Analyst, but I am also the Washington FAFSA Completion Portal Data Manager. So typically, I am the one who researches what's going on with students not showing up, helping individuals who reach out about certain students in the portal, and then also working with non-disclosure agreements and data sharing agreements, which we'll talk about later as well. Um, and thank you to my co-hosts, Christina, Yasleen, and Kathy, who will be helping monitor the chat so that when it is time to do the Q&A, we can get to the different questions that come up. Okay, let's start. So, the agenda will be, we'll go over FAFSA completion portal ins and outs, some tips, the dashboard, some dashboard tips, and then the Q&A, and then resources. As mentioned, you should be receiving a list of the links that will be present throughout this slide. This is to help you kind of follow along, but also afterwards you can use it to just make sure you can access the different resources talked about. The framework that, excuse me, the framework that we're going to be looking at this data from is a person-focused framework. We know that these numbers don't say everything, and we know that there's different reasons for different pathways. So it's also about connecting wherein additional support might be needed. And so rather than just looking at it from the lens of benchmarks, which sometimes we have to with administration, with grants, but there's also the lens of how can this be preventative? How can it be supportive? And so we'll be looking at the framework of here's the data, here's some actions that can be used, and then finally, here's some supports and resources. So hopefully that'll help. Okay. So I just wanted to get to know the audience. So if you wouldn't mind in the chat, this was originally in person, so that's why it says raise your hand. But if you wouldn't mind in the chat saying who you are, um, which district, school, organization you're with, and then some of the resources you've used. Um, and I'll give a minute or two so people can put that in the chat. And then we're going to do a little fun experiment where we're going to have people. Uh, Christina, are they able to raise their hand in this mode?
They should be able to.
Oh, perfect. Okay, then I will be reading out the ESDs, the Education Service District, as well as a description of where it's located because sometimes I forget where each is located myself. So,
They can use a reaction too. If you can't raise your hand, use the reactions. You can use like little claps, hearts, or whatever you want.
perfect. Thank you so much for that, Christina. Okay. So starting out, the first ESD 101, um, Northeast Washington. Does anyone from that area? Okay. ESD 105, South Central Washington. Oh, I saw a hand raise. Okay. ESD 112, Southwest Washington. Oh, seeing some people. Okay. ESD 113, Capital Region. Okay. ESD 114, Olympic Region. Okay. ESD 121, Puget Sound Region. Okay. ESD 123, Southeast Washington. Okay. ESD 171, North Central. Oh, we got some more people. And finally, ESD 189, Northwest. Okay. So I do recognize that some people may not be in these ESDs, especially our charter schools. So anyone who was not included, do you want to raise your hand or give a reaction? Okay. Perfect. So I just thought it was a fun experiment to see because it's always interesting to see too what schools are part of your region that you may not interact with a lot. So it's a fun little experiment. Okay, about WASAC. So WASAC is the Washington Student Achievement Council. This is the state agency that works with advancing educational opportunities and attainment in Washington. So WASAC works with college bound, WA 529, 12th year campaign, the FAFSA portal, FAFSA dashboard. It also works with things like adult pathways, and then also the Washboard, which is the scholarship search engine. Yeah, and so besides that, there's a lot of other programs that are under this, like Washington Grant and the other financial aid assistance programs. Okay. Important note for this is we will be talking a lot about FAFSA because the FAFSA is part of the FAFSA portal as well as the FAFSA completion dashboard, which is based off of the FAFSA portal. That does not mean that WASFA is not part of this conversation. I want to make it clear that for students who cannot complete the FAFSA for reasons such as citizenship, there is the WASFA, which is the Washington Application for State Financial Aid. This means that when it comes to the college and career knowledge booklet, OtterBot, College Bound, and pretty much the Washington financial aid programs, WASFA is connected to all of these. And with 12th year campaign, they also encourage that completion if that is the option. Kind of with the rule of one, you either complete the FAFSA or the WASFA. It's just that we do not have this information on our FAFSA completion portal, as there's no way currently to make it so that it would not be identifiable, which they did WASFA or FAFSA. So for security purposes, we do not share that. Okay. So FAFSA portal ins and outs. I do want to say I will not be going through the FAFSA portal itself. We do have a video, and I also put that in the resources link. But first, get access. So you can contact FAFSA at wasac.wa.gov with your work email, phone number, district, and school. Permissions do require you are in a role where you are directly supporting students with their FAFSA application. This is part of the Department of Education data sharing in relation to FAFSA applications. But that also is why we have a public-facing dashboard. So if you are assisting in other ways, kind of supporting people, you can use that knowledge of the data to see where can there be help and coordination with the team. Okay. So if your district has a data sharing agreement in place, then you can get a non-disclosure agreement and fill it out. The supervisor at your school, as well as yourself, will have to fill this out. One thing to note, though, is that over 82% of districts have signed on. So that is about 252 districts, or about 90% of students or 91% now, of student supporting districts. So basically, when looking at their enrollment records, which is really exciting because we just started this process of getting the new DSAs out in November. We have over 600 NDAs in already. So thank you all for your participation in this. If you want to get an NDA, please let us know and you can reach out to FAFSA at WASAC. In addition, we now have it where it is college bound and FAFSA completion portal, so you will have both of those. Um, if you request both, of course. If no DSA is in place, then we will need to work with your superintendent to get it started. And usually it is a very quick process. Of course, it depends on district policy for the review. There's no limit on FAFSA completion portal users, so you can have like 6, 7 in your school as long as they are working directly with students on their FAFSA applications. Okay, to get into the portal, you will go portal.wasac.wa.gov, enter your username and login. You will need to set up multi-factor authentication. This can be email, text, etc. And just click on the box that says remember me, so you don't have to do it many times a day. We don't want it to be a stressful thing. And then once inside, you will need to go programs and then click on FAFSA completion. Okay. So this is the layout of information. So in the FAFSA completion, you go to the student level FAFSA data. You can actually use the tabs. There's home, which shows the different tables and graphs for your school, your user info, which will have account information, students, which is where you'll find your students tab, and then FAFSA resources. So this has a variety of resources, including a lot of the resources talked about during this presentation. It will also have access to the different training videos we've done. And then student level data. So this is your student list. Many of you are probably familiar with this, but there's the school, the SSID, the last name, first name, birth date, CBS app, if they have a CBS app, according to OSPI, and then FAFSA updated. That means that with the FAFSA update, when was the last FAFSA update? If they did a correction, that would be that date. And then completion status. There's either complete, not submitted, or submitted but incomplete, which means that they have some form of errors. We do not get data on students who have not submitted their FAFSA. We only get data on those that have been processed. And then primary school, yes or no. A lot of the data we use is based on the primary school. So if, for instance, a student is at two schools in the dashboard, it will say the school that is the primary school, not the primary school no. So if you see some differences between the dashboard and that could be part of it. And then match. If there is a match in the system, typically you'll see numbers when they are complete or have submitted but incomplete, but you can also when they're not submitted. And we'll be going over that. Okay, so timeline of FAFSA completion portal. Most enrollment records are received from OSPI by October. This is based on CEDAR's information for the current academic year expected graduation year. So you may notice, why are these students showing up? Well, it may be that this was their expected grad year. They may be taking a little longer. Some students even actually have expected grad year after they graduate. And so it's just important to note these different pieces. Um, and the senior list is based on information from OSPI, which is sent weekly. And then one of the things that was kind of talked about in the video was that the Department of Education FAFSA application is retrieved nightly from Monday through Friday. So that means that you can match, students may match on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, depending on when it becomes processed data for us to pick up. And you will most likely get FAFSA data in mid-October to late October. because we get that from the Department of Education. One of the things I also want to make clear is that the dashboard refreshes on Tuesdays. That's when it's refreshed, but the portal has some graphs as well, and those are refreshed on Mondays. But if you see that your list is not matching, check out the last updated because what can happen is if it's a Thursday and you did a great job, a great presentation, you may have four more students than what you had on Monday. Um, okay, so the first tip, checking the error lists weekly. So if you go to Students tab and click on the schools of interest, if you check the checkbox for errors, so the submitted but incomplete, and click on search, you can get a list of those who have errors. This is essential because these are students who already seem to have interest in moving forward with the FAFSA. The FAFSA completion portal does not have the errors list. We cannot share that, but there is a way for you to work with the student. Look on the FAFSA application. You can go to the FSA account, navigate to the My Activity and the student submission summary for 26-27, check for errors in eligibility overview or FAFSA form answers, and then you can go to make a correction. It will be highlighted as this is the error or this is the error, which is pretty helpful for folks. And of course, you can also give this information to students, but just having that support right there can really make a difference for them to feel like I can get this done right away. Okay. So this is the second tip. So many people may notice that, hey, this student should be matched. What's going on? Well, if there's a slight difference in, let's say, the name, so instead it is John versus Jonathan, or there's a double name, what can happen sometimes is there's not enough information matched in the portal to say that this is for sure a match. And so what they become is a possible match. And so if you search on your list for not submitted and then sort by the match column so that the highest number appears first, let's say two or one, anyone with a potential match that would need review can actually be looked at that way. And so you could click on view details and go to those matches. One thing to note is that when you have multiple matches, two or three, what happens is you will have to look at the first match to move on to the second, which, as many of you know, in cases of twins or triplets, they may actually be matched for all of them because the system may think, hey, these all could be potentials. So it really helps having a portal user go through and just confirm it. Um, and of course, if there's enough matching information, the birth date and the name match basically pretty well, then they will just be an automatic match. Yeah, and we do match now based on legal name. That is a change this year. We now receive OSPI legal name from Cedars, so that's very helpful in just making sure that students are matched and yet they can still go by the name that is preferred on their student record. Okay, so we talked about a lot of these already. What if the student school record name doesn't match legal name? Um, and what if my students aren't appearing at all in the portal? Oftentimes that can be expected grad year, as mentioned. It can also be a sign of an exit code being in place or the enrollment code not being in place for the year. So that's when you would work with your Cedars district admin to confirm that. And if a student was in the portal last year, they would not be in the portal this year because the system does not double count. So it locks down those statistics. But of course, you can still meet with them, talk to them, figure out ways to support them. It's just we would not be able to show that in the portal at this time. We are looking at different pieces of how to examine like our second year seniors or the second time they've been a senior, things like that. And so that is a hope for the future when working with OSPI. How long does it take to process a FAFSA application? It can take up to a business week for us to get the information. So even though a student may have a submitted page, there's still going to be that time for it to process between the submission and processing. And we already talked about the table. Okay, and so we covered all that. Now, what if a match is not showing? These are the most common issues. I would say 90% of the time, this is going to be what's going on. So date of birth on Cedars and FAFSA app is not matching. You would check the FAFSA app and then check the student portal to see if there's a difference. Legal name in Cedars is not matching close enough to legal name in FAFSA. You can also check the FAFSA application. This can also be tricky with double names or newly married names. So one of the things is that if a student on one piece has both names, but they don't have it on the other, then that can also cause some discrepancies. Also, I would say a majority of it tends to be the 25-26 FAFSA was complete rather than the 26-27. So we've had, I believe, over 100 where I've witnessed it, where it's over 100 students wherein they did the 25-26, but they did not do the 26-27, and that's why they didn't show up. Student did not completely submit the application. You would check the FAFSA app as well. And then one of the other things is if a student is in a border school or military situation where parent residence is out of state, what they can do is they can create a correction to add a Washington institution. And the reason for this is we only get students whose state of residence is Washington, or if they're going to a Washington institution. So that's one way for us to be able to see them. And we also know there's border agreements between some of our schools with other states. So we also recognize that piece. Okay. So I will be switching over to the FAFSA completion dashboard for high school seniors. And one of the good things is we're going to go over a few scenarios as well. Let me just check something. Um, Christina, are y'all able to see the slide? The FAFSA completion for high school seniors?
Yes, I see the slide. And then when you
Oh,
trans over to the website, just let me know.
oh, I just did. Is it not?
Nope, it's still showing you'll have to switch over. Sorry.
No problem. We had this issue before, so we were like, probably good to try to check this over. Okay, here we go. Perfect. Okay, did that work?
It's almost there. There we go. Now it's totally working. You've got it.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much for your help on that. Okay, y'all. So we're going to go over the FAFSA completion for high school seniors. And so here's some pieces to know. The at a glance page is basically, if you will, it's a summary page, right? So there's information on the state, information on FRPL students, number of completed FAFSAs, and then some longitudinal information. You can break it down here by the different map views. There's district, there's school, ESD. And then lastly, there is what's called the leaderboard. The leaderboard is a way for people to kind of build some friendly competition with other schools, as well as encourage their league. And this is based on WIAA leagues, which is the extracurricular athletics leagues. But one of the things is not everyone is part of a WIAA league. And so they will not be on the FAFSA dashboard leaderboard, but they will be in other sections. So just because you don't see your school on this drop down here doesn't mean your information isn't elsewhere. Okay, so I want to start first off at the current completion rates by subgroup. Now, one of the things is this is based on state level and district currently. We have talked about in the future moving to also school, but one thing to note is everything on the dashboard has a data suppression rule of 20, which means that if the group is less than 20, we cannot show that. But that also means for completion subgroups, if you had only 19 students who had military parents, for instance, you may not see them. So that would leave at the school level a lot of blanks. So figuring that piece out. But what I want to talk about is let's go to a school district and let's look at something. Now, college-bound scholar status. There's different subgroups you can do right here, but if you look at the data, here it is 52% for all students. For the non-college bound students, it's 53%, and for the college-bound students, it's 46%. So by looking at the subgroup data, you can see where there's discrepancies and how to support them. So one of the things is we do have CBS app as part of the FAFSA completion portal lists. So you could actually go there and look at the list and see, okay, maybe I need to talk to some of these students who are not submitted and who are college-bound students to really make sure they know that if they're college-bound students, they may have this available, but they may also have Washington College Grant available, which is a huge support for them. Um, and so this is one way to target that, but you can also target in different ways. So you can look at homelessness status and basically determine, okay, should I maybe talk to my McKinney-Vento person more about this? I'm seeing a discrepancy. Or even with migrant status, looking at migrant coordinator or disability status, looking at incorporating paras into some of this conversation. How can you work with them to ensure that they know that they can kind of relay students to the counselor or also give them support? So this is a way to really build some of that supportive partnerships. So you're also not doing it all. So we always talk about situations. And so if you think about it, this is one situation where you have supports by partnering with others, hopefully. Okay. Now, here's another one, the completion leaderboard. Oh, there we go. So if you look at the leaderboard, you can actually change the school and then look at the league and see what other schools are available and see kind of who you might also coordinate with in your region. If you're seeing a huge difference in terms of positive or negative, how can you partner with them? Especially if you're close by, how can you do larger events together? Some people have partnered to do college fairs, career fairs, incorporating financial aid information, or also bringing in individuals like community colleges, federal credit unions, as well as just individuals who are in their region. So like community-based organizations too. So it's kind of grouping together to maximize the support. Also, it sometimes is very exciting to have some friendly competition, especially as many people know, students can get very excited, especially if they're school rivalries. Um, and I did want to mention these two right here. This is the summary page, and this is the state where we are right now versus where we were at the end. I didn't want to go through all of them, so I want to focus on a few, but I just wanted to highlight that. Okay. The map of current FAFSA completion rates. I would say this tends to be the most exciting one for a lot of people because you can look at different things. You could look at your district, the county, ESD, or the school map. And one of the nice things is you can also look at other schools in your area by county or by district. So if you want to, you could see how many have completed at different schools in your district and see about how to reach out to them. Um, One of the things we oftentimes encourage too is how can you bring other people into the mix? So, especially for our alternative schools or our schools of choice, how to either bring students to those schools or bring them to the regular public school. Because one of the things is that it's also figuring out how to maximize that support across the district. Um, so that's one exciting thing. And one of the other things is that many people use it as a way for students to know about other organizations, other public schools, the schools of choice, like the Skills Center. So it can be a learning opportunity as well. Okay. The map of year-over-year changes in the FAFSA completion rates by school district is only at the school district level, and it will just showcase where you were at last year versus where you are at this year. And so I hope that helps. Okay. And then, okay, there we go. The trends in FAFSA completion over time, I just want to highlight that this one is another one where you can actually use it for a scenario where if you want to talk to your administration about how well certain things are going, well, you could go to the school view and figure out, okay, this time last year we saw a jump of, let's say, right here 7%. But here, we're seeing a jump of 8%. Some of the years are a little slanted because one of the things that we have learned is that with the FAFSA opening in class of 2024 in January and the class of 25 in December, this is the first year since class of 2023 where we have the same time frame of starting in October. But if you look at it, you can also look at it within the same year. If it's only been a little bit, so it's kind of at zero, but then it goes up by 5% or 4%, then you can also confirm with them saying, hey, I think that our different efforts are paying off. Or if you think there's more that needs to be done, you can highlight to them, this is how it would help us in the future. And then historical FAFSA rates is a way for you to look at your district and compare in previous years to see what do you want to do this year. If we did 47% and we're at Aberdeen, maybe we want to do 49%. So that is a goal. Some people even talk about doing different metrics and doing different visual things. So, like some of those thermometers with fundraising, when you reach that $1,000, everyone cheers, everyone's excited, but they also get to see it as it grows and grows. Well, that's something that can be done as well for FAFSA completion rates, where it's seeing how the school is going up together and seeing how the efforts are coming together. And then the organizational resources is very similar to the other resources that you can find on the FAFSA completion portal, but there's other things too. There is the FAFSA filers dashboard, which is cumulative weekly counts. This is every FAFSA in the state. So one thing to note is this is not based on high school seniors. This is just FAFSA in general. And then SAP Dashboard Strategic Action Plan um, also has a FAFSA completion breakdown, but is updated annually at the end of the year. And that is updated towards October, November. Okay. I'm going to stop my share again so I can go back to the slideshow. And we're almost done with this section, so thank you all for your patience. And then we'll go into Q&A. Oh, Christina, are you able to see the slideshow again?
Oh, yes, it looks good.
Perfect. Okay. Next, we'll just talk about internal pathways and tracking because one of the things is we know there's students who are missed. Um, there are students who have other pathways they're looking at, and we want to recognize that. And so it's important to have an internal pathways tracking to see about the students who are also not submitted on what their plans are, because this also helps to identify when there might be some confusion. And so here are two stories from schools that I think are important to talk about that you find by looking at internal pathways. So, one was students were not aware that they could use FAFSAs for certificates. So, many certificate programs, especially at the CTCs, are available for Washington College Grant, federal financial aid, college bound. And so, students did not realize always that they could complete the FAFSA or the WASFA as a way for them to get that support. And so that's one thing that is really essential is making sure that if you're tracking it this way, you're able to see when there is confusion among students and support them so that they have the correct information. But the other was students who were taking gap years and saying, I won't do my FAFSA. But the thing is that the FAFSA does not mean you're committing to doing school the next year. It means that you are wanting financial aid at some point. And so one of the things is, as many of us know, a lot of our communities do not have the same supports for our adults as we do in our high schools. So for high school seniors, one thing you can talk to them about is, we can try the FAFSA. Think of it as a demo run. We'll try and make it work, but we also will have it available so that when it's time for them to renew, they don't have to start from square one. They have that support already in place. They know what to do. They know what to look into. And so many students actually will do the FAFSA before their gap year so that when they go back to school, it's something that they can look at. In addition, by them doing the FAFSA, it allows them to see what can I maybe look forward to? Because many students take a gap year and they don't go back. And so it's a way for them to feel comfortable and feel confident that they have something to look forward to when they're deciding to come back after a year, after three, after more. So, okay. So I hope those scenarios helped and showcasing some of the data. Okay, so let's do a quick 5-minute intermission Q&A, and then we'll go into the resources. Christine, are there any questions?
Yes. So let me go through here real quickly. Okay. The first question I see is we have seniors missing from our portal. Do you know why they wouldn't show up and if they're being pulled from Cedars? And that seems like it was a question from two different people as well.
Okay, so I think I did answer that earlier, but most likely it would be expected grad year. It could be exit code, but I would check with your Cedars district administrator about that, um, and just confirm it. So one question that comes up a lot is, can we just manually add a student? And we cannot because we are getting weekly updates from OSPI. It would just refresh over it and then they would go missing every single week. So I think that would be the best. If you do have those questions, you can reach out directly to FAFSA and I can look through it with you and maybe we can work together on identifying what's going on. But usually it's expected grad year or student was already counted in a previous year.
Thank you. And that was the only question that we had. So I think we can move to resources. And then remember, if you have more questions, go ahead and put them in the chat. If you're listening to this as a recording, we'll have a lot of this information, that one pager that's also in the same file as this recording.
Thank you so much, Christine, for adding that. Okay, so we talked about the data, we talked about the action. Now let's look at resources. One of the exciting things is Washington has a wide variety of resources available to assist counselors, whether you're new to the role, as well as CBOs, community-based organizations, because we recognize a lot of counselors do not have the capacity, and so they partner a great deal with CBOs, and that partnership is what really counts. Um, because we're all in this together. So other resources are 12th year campaign, OtterBot, the material order form, the college and career knowledge booklet, college bound portal, and partnership building. And partnership building is exciting because we did this webinar or portion of this webinar back in October, and I asked everyone what partnerships they had built. And so we compiled that information together. And so when you look at what partnerships there are, you will be seeing partnerships that have been mentioned by other schools and districts. Excuse me. So 12th year campaign. The 12th year campaign boosts college and financial aid application rates in Washington by helping those working with high school seniors and their families complete applications for college admissions and financial aid. That is Christina Winstead, who does a lot of the work on the west side, and Yasleen Torres Pena, who does a lot of the work on the east side. And the really nice thing is both of them have worked hard to build networks that may not have been there before. And so, as many of you have seen, either experiencing them coming to your schools, providing webinars, providing trainings, or assisting students and guardians with one-on-one support when they've had some tough questions. So, both of them have a wide variety of knowledge when it comes to FAFSA and WASFA, as well as how to best support in a variety of situations, such as for students who have mixed status families, students who also may be experiencing different scenarios, such as independent status. So that's a really helpful thing. And one of the things is they also have student family financial aid events. You can go to this link to find it. It's also provided in the link sheet. It's open to everyone, and all sessions are in English and Spanish. So that's one of the nice things is you can also look to a lot of their resources for tips and for suggestions and for templates so that you can support especially Spanish speaking families because many of these terms that are used in financial aid are not easily translatable and it can be very tough. And so it's nice to have these developed so that families can feel included and feel like they belong in that space. So one of the other things is College Access Initiatives Training Center. This is an exciting thing because one of the pieces is you can learn about financial aid basics. They are also looking at ways that you can do financial aid navigation and also looking at further trainings focusing on different scenarios that schools and partnerships have talked about, where they want to know how do I talk to my students who are experiencing homelessness? How do I talk to my students whose parent may not be available to fill out the FAFSA? So things like that, they're looking at ways to develop further specified trainings as well. And one of the exciting things is the financial aid basics training is also a way for you to get clock hours asynchronously. Sorry, that was a tough word for me. And so that's pretty exciting so that you can do that anytime and you can reference it and look back at it. We also have college bound webinars, other financial trainings such as this one, as well as WASAC Wednesdays. WASAC Wednesdays are so they take place on the first Wednesday of every month, and they have an open Q&A style. And so you can just talk to one another, figure out what are people doing related to financial aid, what questions are there. Oftentimes, 12th year takes the lead, but they may have other guests who take part in it. And what's more is um, Oftentimes it provides a space for you to have further conversation later. So if you have specific questions that may have personally identifying information that should not be included because it's a public space, then you can always reach out to them after. But you can at least figure out kind of the main topic areas and what you're looking for advice on. Okay. Then there's the OtterBot texting service. This is a free statewide, state managed AI powered texting service. It's 24/7 support to Washington high school students and their parents and guardians, and you get guidance on financial aid and college application processes, career explorations, reminders, and more. One thing I want to mention is if there are questions that students ask or guardians ask that the bot can't answer, it relays it to someone on staff who will actually respond. The other thing is all of the questions and the answers that students and guardians get have been vetted by WSAC staff. So that means we are looking through it and we're like, oh, this is an old link, or oh no, this needs to be updated. So that's really exciting way so that you can make sure that, okay, I feel comfortable, especially with things like college bound that are more specific to Washington or Washington College Grant or Running Start. It is available in multiple languages. Students and guardians can enter hashtag language, and that's a way to get to it, or hashtag Spanish if specifically they're looking for Spanish support. Um, Students and guardians can also opt out at any time. So students who are in college bound or guardians are opted in if we have their phone number, but they are always given that option of opting out and told about it in the beginning. This also has campaigns that are focused on financial aid, admissions and enrollment, college going info, and reminders. So starting in ninth grade, there is a journey map that students are able to get communications and campaigns about why it's important to connect to your school. Find a mentor. What about extracurricular activities? In sophomore year, they might learn more about what about your career interests? What about college? What about what types of programs are you interested in? What types of alternative pathways are you looking at after high school? And then lastly, senior year, they get a ton of information on financial aid reminders. They also get information on FAFSA, WASFA, scholarships, and what it means to go to a place outside of your community. Because for many students, that first semester, there's a lot of transition. And so it's really nice to have that support. OtterBot is focused on social emotional learning as well. So a lot of the components have that in place in the communication campaigns. Okay. College Access Initiatives material order form. This is where you can get information on College Bound, OtterBot, 12th year. It also has flyers. It has digital and printed. One of the things is we do ask that you coordinate with others in your school or district so that we're not sending 400 books to a school with 100 students. Um, it usually takes 2 to 4 weeks to process, and oftentimes things are updated when they are available. It will also say typically what languages the different materials are in. So some materials may have a few, some may have more, and that will also be included as well if they are in print version or digital. Okay, so one of the things that came about through a lot of coordination among a lot of agencies, schools, counselors, and students was the College and Career Knowledge Book. So this actually has two components. There's the booklet, but there's also student lessons. So you can go to the student lessons, and the link is provided in this screenshot. And you can also look at the books themselves. So the hard copy books, as of recently, the English books are out, but we do have the Spanish. The thing to note is this is completely in digital format. So those 6 languages have digital versions. And so chapter one is all about college and career. Chapter two is getting ready. Chapter three is paying for college. Four is Washington state aid, including college bound and other um, state aid programs. The applying for college is chapter five, and chapter six is enrolling in college. So these have many components about how to succeed in high school, what to consider in preparing, what are the different options after high school in terms of education opportunities. And then it also has a breakdown of what you might want to talk about in different grade levels so that students who are probably feeling very overwhelmed their senior year aren't getting all of this information, but they can take it at their own pace. And it's a great way for them to reference things so that they have a helpful tool at home that they can look back to. Okay. Besides FAFSA Completion Portal, you can also assist students with the College Bound portal access. So, College Bound, we oftentimes talk to our portal users about the importance of updating College Bound contact information. With Senate Bill 6053, that did give quite a bit of contact information for high school students, which is a great thing. This was sharing information with public institutions as well as WASAC. But we also need the support because in seventh and eighth grade, we send out certificates, or well, not anymore. We currently are sending information notifications, and then we also send information on the requirements associated with College Bound so that they have more information when it's time, when they're seniors. But also, as long as we have their information by ninth grade, we can start getting them involved in email reminder campaigns, getting them resources, getting them connected to OtterBot, and getting them connected to just a wide variety of other information platforms, such as 12th year, so that they can look up information to assist them, like the financial aid calculator, which is a way for them to basically see kind of like what are some of the tools that are available to me so I feel like I know a little bit more about what's available when they go on to education after high school. Okay, we're almost there, y'all. So I believe this is the second to last slide. Partnership building across the state, things to consider. These are these are the ideas that got brought up by people in these webinars. So thank you so much. Some of these we've heard before, but some of these were totally new. So student clubs, they actually have their future business leaders of America or their DECA students or students in peer mentorship or other students maybe in independent study who talk about financial aid, talk about their experiences, who share with them ideas. So then you're actually having that near peer mentoring as part of it, but they're also getting valuable service as is required by a lot of different organizations. Credit unions oftentimes talk about financial aid and financial literacy, which we talk about just the importance of bridging those two for students to feel fully supported. Community colleges and universities, skills and tech centers, career fairs, community-based organizations. So there's things like College Success Foundation. They have regional partners that you may want to look into coordinating with and they're across the state. You may have regional specific, like Launch Northwest in the Spokane region, or Futures Northwest and the Skagit and Whatcom counties. Or you may have some even more specific to your general area or your city. And then libraries. Libraries have been a huge support for a lot of this work across the state. And what we know is libraries are one of those places that a lot of students go to when they are leaving school. I myself was a library kid, so I definitely appreciate the libraries and know how much they do for a lot of youth in our communities as a free option to hang out and to feel like it's a space to belong. And then looking at what similar schools or districts might be interested in sharing with their resources, their techniques. Why reinvent the wheel? That's one of the things we really encourage is we don't have to reinvent the wheel when we have so many people doing such cool things. And if people are willing to share that, that's way better. Okay, your future funded. So, one of the things that we are doing as part of the Governor Ferguson's Washington Completes FAFSA campaign to increase financial aid application completion rates is we are doing a week from April 20th to the 24th so that students can feel brought back in. Oftentimes we hear from students that it's too late. It's March, it's April, it's done. It's like actually a lot of community colleges are still accepting FAFSAs and WASFAs. Oftentimes that's great, especially if you're interested in maybe transitioning, transferring to another school at some point, another community. But right now you want to be in this community. One of the other things is the Year Future Funded has just information on filing support. We're going to be doing communications coordinations, asking people what social media efforts they're looking at, really blasting people out so that more people hear about what's going on across the state. And then we'll also have toolkits and resources, including activities, information on how to engage families, and then also templates on how to really reach out to students because we know it's hard, especially because having no templates means that it puts more work on your plate. So if we can assist in some of that information and some of the resources, you can put into place what pieces you want to be expressed to students as well. So it's customized to your specific students. Okay. And now we have, oh, actually, I see we are over by 2 minutes. My apologies. If people want to continue staying, please feel free to. We will have options for questions at this point. And I appreciate y'all who did stay. So,
And I'm happy to. We've got a couple questions in the chat.
oh,
And thank you all who are staying. In the chat, one of the questions was what happens when a student has a super long name, as someone who has a super long name. I love this question. So you only get to see part of it. So what happens if they have a super long name and it doesn't fit in there, or they have several names that don't fit into I'm assuming the FAFSA or WAFSA. What's the best way to make sure that they match? I did enter in there that, so the FAFSA is going to allow 30 characters in the last name and 18 on the first name. They're going to fit as much as they can in there, matching the Social Security Administration card if applicable.
yeah,
And that typically will work.
I
Um,
think that's the perfect answer.
Yeah, and then
I,
the next question, I'm just going to go through them a little quickly because I know that we're short on time. Um, why does a student have to register in the military in order to apply for FAFSA? So that's actually not the case. It used to be that selective service was required as part of federal funding for federal student aid, and they removed that requirement with like when we did the simplification. One of the things about simplification that was amazing is that we were able to, that was one of the things that was removed as a requirement. So it doesn't even ask on the application anymore if they've registered for selective service. They even removed the question from it. If I see any changes, that's going to change that application for the 27, 28 year. I will let you know immediately. But you can also put any of your comments or concerns into you can put them into the public comment period right now that's going on for federal student aid. Um, and then the next question was, where do we find the resources to get involved for April 20th or 24th? Becky, of course we can find you those. We are sending out a web page. And Becky, I'll make sure that it gets over to you as well. Let me see if it's up yet. Yasleen, if you're in the chat still,
I can put it
if you,
in.
oh, perfect. Yeah. And then are schools able to make WAFSA corrections right now? Um, I know they're working on some changes to the WAFSA, and so there is some feedback right now that we're asking from practitioners, and so I can check on that, Lorena.
Thank you so much for that. And yeah, WASPA corrections has come up a few times, so appreciate
Yeah.
that.
There's some changes that are coming to the WAFSA, and so we're going to ask you all for feedback of like, hey, like what questions you're getting asked, all that, and like the thing is as we change it, it's to change it to make sure that it's the best for students when it comes to accessibility, but also to make sure that their information is protected. So we'll be reaching out to y'all for feedback, but also my solemn promise is that we'll train you when that's changed. Yes, thank you. Like we love your feedback. It truly, like I'm sending an email out right now that's asking for like 5 survey questions. This feedback helps us develop like sessions like Sean's and like other things that we're doing across the state. So your feedback is like gold to us. And if you give us feedback, if you see me at an event, Wasco, Wisher, whatever it is, I 99% of the time have chocolate for you as a thank you. Come by and see me. But we just appreciate it so much.
Yeah. And thank you for those who stayed after. I do want to mention because I was actually the one who forgot this part. So the survey I have put in the chat and it is at the bottom. There is a survey if you want to get feedback on how to improve this. A lot of the pieces to this were actually based on people's feedback. So basically, the questions they had, the pieces they wanted to be a little more, that's kind of what built this out. So we definitely are using the feedback and definitely appreciate it. And thank you for those who I know with the technical difficulties that made this last a lot longer. So my apologies for going over. Have a great day, y'all. Thank you so much for joining in.